I came across this post on Instagram, and it was sharing this research that suggested that you are way more likely to die from all causes of mortality if you are alone, if you do not have healthy human relationships. Apparently, it wasn't just about romantic relationships, it was just about relationships in general. And it kind of makes sense because we are social creatures, but the numbers, the percentages were quite something. And so I decided to research it a little bit further. And I have the notes right here. Apparently, loneliness increases early death risk by 26 to 29%. That's the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So it's pretty serious, isn't it? And it made me think about all the comments I've seen on the internet on red pill videos and men going their own way videos, as well as on my videos, where some guys, they claim that men don't feel lonely at all, or they don't feel lonely at all. And I believe people, if you tell me something, I'm not gonna immediately think that you are full of shit or anything. That's why I want to talk to all these different sides and perspectives in these videos of mine. And just so you know, I was actually single for 9 years myself, and I moved away from my high school friends to another city, and I was isolated for, I would say, at least 1 year. I was very isolated. I barely saw anybody. One reason was because I'm a massive introvert, and then the other one was I just didn't feel like I need more people. It didn't feel natural for me to think that, oh, hey, I'm going to go outside and into public places and try to connect with new people. So I just stayed home. I played video games and watched anime and, all the stuff you can do alone. And I felt fine. I didn't feel lonely. There was only a few times during those 9 years of being single where I felt lonely. It was usually when I went to the lake cabin with my friends. And after spending 2 nights at the lake cabin, when my friends would leave, I would feel extremely emotional. Those were the only times where I truly felt sad. I watched from the window as I stayed behind at the cabin because it's my parents' lake cabin. So I wanted to clean places up and stuff. So I would watch from the window as my friends would leave with their cars. And I knew that these friends of mine, they were going home to their girlfriends. And I knew that I'm going to go home to an empty home. And at the time for me, that was so sad. It made me so sad. And I know a lot of people who have very bad experiences of marriages, etc. Like there's a YouTube channel called Better Bachelor, a very good channel. I used to watch it a lot. And if I remember correctly, he was married a couple of times. And then the last marriage, he just decided that he's had enough. And he went to, I don't remember if he bought a house or whatever it was, but I remember him describing that he just fell on the floor alone in an empty house. And he felt so free and so good and so amazing because his marriages were terrible, apparently. And could be I remember some of the details wrong, but in any case, there's a lot of people out there who have these experiences where their, especially romantic relationships, have been so shitty that they would choose being alone any day over choosing to be with somebody else, especially with a woman. So there's that. Let everyone know in the comments what your experience is, because I'm so curious about the people who leave comments in videos like the men going their own way stuff and red pill stuff, because I understand it 100% if you are someone who's been in toxic relationships. My first relationship when I was, 17 years old until 20 years old, it was a very toxic one. It was terrible. It was just awful. And that's why I stayed single for such a long time, because I had kind of a trauma from that relationship. And then I would just watch these videos online about how there's other cases that are terrible. And it's so easy to get into that mindset that you have to get very lucky to find a good relationship that is actually healthy and good to be in. And that made me think about, what about the divorced people? What about the, like, if it's healthier, like the research that I found said married men live longer and healthier lives than single or divorced men. It's fascinating. It's a hard pill to swallow. It really is, because when you look at the internet and you look at videos on YouTube, etc., you would think that how can that possibly be the case? Especially because, sorry for looking at the notes here. Let me find the, so in the US, 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce. For first marriages, 30 to 35% end in divorce. So it's kind of hard to believe in finding a woman and finding love that will last forever, right? When you have these numbers are so big these days. And then here's the catch. Divorced men have the highest mortality rate. So it's basically, the research is suggesting that married men are the healthiest. Single men have it significantly worse, and then divorced men have it even more significantly worse. So it's basically about, do you want to take the risk of marrying the wrong person and then getting divorced and, losing a lot of your wealth, if you have kids, maybe you will lose custody. There's a lot of these horror stories online, right? So do you want to take that risk of going through something so terrible? And then the data suggests that actually you're going to end up even worse than if you are single forever. So it's about, do you want to take the risk or do you not want to take the risk, right? Oh yeah, and strong social ties reduce risk of death by 50%. That's insane. Sounds like a pretty insane number. And you always gotta take all this research with a grain of salt, because you don't really, for example, I have this pulled up, like this list of research, but I haven't looked deeper into the research, how they conducted the research, etc. So never take anything with face value without, digging deeper. But it is very fascinating to see these things. But getting back to my own personal experience, like I said, I never really felt lonely except those few times with the friends at the lake cabin. And that's why my theory is that most guys who claim that they are completely fine single, they do mean that, because that's how you feel. When you are alone, you really do not usually feel like you need anyone, because you do feel fine. And there's so much freedom about being single anyway, and being, friends are always nice to have, but there's also friends who are not so good for you. So there is no one simple answer, in my opinion, especially because there's so many different kinds of people across the world. There's something like 8 billion people on the planet at this point. So of course there's a lot of variety. So if you genuinely feel like you're better off without trying to find friends, better off without trying to find especially a girl, then I don't know, man. You are the one who knows yourself better than I do. I don't know who I'm talking to here anyway. So, Godspeed. All the best to you. Yeah, I feel like I'm done, but it's only 10 minutes. I want to talk more. Fuck. But anyway, I suppose if you want to make any sense of why would married men be more healthy? Well, because you get emotional support, you get intimacy. Those are a couple of things. And when I think back to my own single days when I was isolated, I wasn't craving for a touch, really. But I do remember that whenever even just my pet cat that I had at my parents' place, and I would go to my parents and I would hang out with my pet cat and it would sleep on my chest. I remember it felt really good. And, whether I hugged someone or whatever, which was very rare because in my family we are not very touchy, I do remember it always felt good. And that's a big part of the health benefit, apparently, that when you have a woman, you get to, hug them, kiss them, hold hands, spoon with them, all kinds of things. And that releases hormones and chemicals in your body that are healthy for you and that reduce stress. But, a lot of these things, they come down to stress because stress is like the ultimate killer. Stress basically increases your chances of catching all sorts of nasty things, including cancer. And that is why you can make the counter argument that if you're in a toxic, shitty relationship, aren't you going to have more stress? And I think the answer is yeah, you are going to have more stress than being alone. So that is why, to end this video with some kind of a point, if I want to make any kind of a point with this video, I would say never get into a relationship just because you think you should. So even though there is actual data, this is not my opinion, this is research. Research suggests that if you do find a good relationship, it's gonna keep you more healthy. So those are facts, not my opinions. But my experience is this. If you get into a relationship just for the sake of getting into a relationship like I did when I was 17 years old, and then you end up with the wrong girl, it's the most stressful, it's all this extra bullshit and drama and stress. You can't live your life normally because you have to think all the time, what is going to happen next? What kind of bullshit do I have to deal with next? So the worst thing, in my opinion, is to pick the wrong girl. And that's what a lot of guys in these red pill communities try to point out. Some guys say that all relationships are games, which is not true. But here's the catch. You don't really know who is the girl who just fakes being a genuinely good person and who's the one who really is genuinely a good person. It's kind of difficult to tell when you meet somebody. You don't know that because you can never really know. So it's always a risk that you're taking. So it is always a risk that you gotta take, or you don't have to take. But if you do, it is definitely a risk. And I still, look, I have decided that I am always going to tell guys, younger guys, you shouldn't be so afraid and you should try to find love if you feel that's what you want. And most people, they want that. Maybe you watching this, listening to this, maybe you don't want it. But chances are a lot of other people do. Most people do. If you want love, you should still get after it. Because a lot of guys, I've seen these comments also, a lot of guys think that they are not good enough, especially in today's world. Because, we all see how women only want the top, whatever, 5% or 10%, whatever it is. Women want the tall guy, the rich guy, and this and that. But in reality, women don't give a fuck about much anything. It's just on the dating app they do. Because on the dating apps, you can list all sorts of things and you can imagine what you would like. Even with me, I used to swipe most of the women left on Tinder, like 90 something percent, because I was looking for someone perfect. Because why not? When you have thousands and thousands of people on the app, why wouldn't you just keep searching for more, searching for better? But what actually happens in the real life, when you meet someone in the real life and you interact with them, they don't need to be that special. And it's the same for women. You can be a pretty basic guy when it comes to your looks, when it comes to your finances, but you need to have certain masculine qualities to yourself. You need to be assertive enough, you need to be confident enough, you need to be, in a way, you need to be cocky enough, because one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people do, myself included, is that you try to be a nice guy. You try to think what others want. And especially if you are grown, especially if you're raised in a society and an environment where you feel like women are somehow these perfect angels, which I mentioned in my previous video also, that putting women on pedestal is very bad. It's even bad in a relationship, not just trying to get into a relationship, but even within a relationship. You still don't want to try to make the other person feel good all the time. You don't want to optimize for keeping your wife happy. You know, happy wife, happy life is something I used to see around, and that's just not the case. It's more like, well, it doesn't rhyme if you say it, but happy man makes a happy wife. Because if you're a confident man and you are taking care of your shit, like, there's been a lot of times where my confidence has made my girlfriend feel safe. When she asks about something, like what's gonna happen in the next year, can we go on that trip? Can we afford something? Is it gonna be okay? And when I tell her, yeah, I know it's gonna be okay, because I'm actually confident about it, she feels so goddamn safe. She feels happy about it. And of course you have stories of how guys get rejected and how guys get divorced and everything's fucking terrible. But at the same time, you have a lot of stories online about guys who are short, who are, ordinary, who are this and that, and they still get women. And I used to have this conversation with my best friend in the past, a few times I remember, that we would both see couples outside where the guy was somebody really basic. We thought the guy looked a little bit stupid, and the guy was like there's nothing special about the guy. And then the guy had the hottest girl. And we were wondering, how on earth is that possible? How does that make any sense? Because it doesn't make sense if all you listen to is how women want the perfect guy. Well, they actually don't. They want a confident guy. It all comes down to being a man who defends his truth, is doing his best, is confident, is capable, and doesn't give a shit. Ultimately, it comes down to that. And now you are saying, no, that's not true. The modern women, they want the perfect guy. They play the games. They are terrible, etc., etc. And you're right. There are those modern women who are full of shit because they have been brainwashed by the extreme modern feminism, just like, some guys go to extreme ends of hating on women, etc. There's a lot of these girls who go to the extreme end of women are perfect and should be treated like queens, even if they are fat and lazy and full of shit. So I will talk about modern women later in another video. I don't want to talk about it anymore at this one because this is too long. I think I promised in my previous video to talk about them, but I forgot. So in the future, I will make a video. Let's define the modern woman and let's talk about what the hell is going on with that phenomena, because it's not a complete imaginary creature. It is a real thing. Yeah, especially when you look in the social media, there's some crazy shit out there, and those people exist, obviously. But that's another topic for another time. Anyway, if you want to have more discussions like these, then remember to subscribe if you feel like it, and leave a like for the video because it helps the algorithm. And I will see you in the next one next week. Thank you for watching.